nowhere close to everybody, but over 50% for the last 3 years. 1 or 2 years we got less than that earlier. But that's what we do in Contra Costa. We feel good about that. We feel that we're doing something that is a good follow-up, and we share that, by the way, share the results that we get with the press and the existing jury. And they can decide what they want to do about that, including we share who we sent it to that didn't respond. So, any question?
Do you have a copy of that letter?
I have up here 15 copies of a description of the program and a sample letter. Now, your turn.
Placer County just really got started with reinvigorating their implementation review committee. And I brought copies of the guidelines that we came up with based on CGJA's recommendations that were on the website. But I also brought a tracking document that we've developed, because we found the current, maybe last 3 grand juries have done a really good job of following up when those initial responses come back saying, this is not a legal response, you don't have a timeline, you need to fix this. And they have form letters that they've developed to send out to those responders. But we've gone back farther to find, we're going to implement it in the future. No timeline. We're going to implement it by X date. No follow-up. So we've got a tracking document that we've gone through some reports, and we've listed the reports, and if they didn't meet legal requirements, we put the code. I brought some sample letters, just like what you're talking about, where you quote the recommendation, you quote the response, and why it didn't meet legal requirements. And please pass that on. So I think the biggest thing for us is to keep track of where we are, because we're just getting started. We have kind of a lot to look at. But my other question I'm hoping to answer, how do chapters submit documents to get on the chapter resource list?
Send it to me.
Okay. Okay, that's a great one. But anyway, I'll put all of our stuff on the table.
Okay, my answer of send them to me, I'll be more explicit. Send your information that you want to put on the chapter resources page to membership@cgja.org. Got that? Membership@cgja.org. And that will come to me, and then I will work with our webmaster, and we will eventually figure out how to get that on the website.
Rich, next question.
I think that I got one from our webmaster that I'd like to get to.
And then I'll take it up there.
Okay, I'll be quick. After many years of kicking around how we could get this done, we finally put together a process where the 4-person of the current jury and a committee of the association will meet and decide what reports to review. And then we will do that work for the jury, because they don't have the staffing, they don't have the time to do all of that. We will do that work. After we do the reviews, we will then send our recommendation in the same way as any other person or group would send a complaint back to the jury, and they will do whatever they see fit with it. We found, our concern was, I don't know how it works in your county, but I'm guessing every county is probably similar. We have certain areas that have long histories of non-compliance. We have school districts that every time we go out, and we do them almost every year, they say, we're going to get a new superintendent of schools. And they get a new superintendent, nothing ever gets any better. And so rather than us put that whole package together, it's quite possible that that jury foreperson is going to do that school district anyways. So don't waste our time putting that together. And so we'll work together to decide which ones to work. There's a couple of reasons. First of all, we think that's very important, but that's the number, we think that's the number one way to get former jurors to become members of our association. That's what people really want to do when they leave the jury. They still want to do some kind of investigative work. And so we have hopes of that increasing our enrollment. Thank you.
Okay, Larry, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I'll try to speak up. Mine's a question, Rich, and it has to do with what's done in Contra Costa. I'm wondering if you do a qualitative assessment of the implementation, or is it just a yes they did and no they didn't? And kind of the second part of that is, if the answer is no they didn't, what then happens?
Okay, we don't do a qualitative assessment, and I might get in trouble with my fellow chapter members, but we tried to do that before, a few years ago, and we could never, as a committee even, agree on which things we want to do something about when we were looking at things qualitatively. So we do the straight yes or no objective statement thing because that's something we could get agreement on. Not that that's a good thing, but it's something we're able to agree on. And we haven't addressed the issue of what do we do after that. We haven't gotten to the point of, well, they still stonewalled us or they gave us some kind of answer. We haven't addressed that. Now, I'd like to make one other comment, Mr. Allen in particular. I'm hoping that all the different things that different chapters do, a description of what your chapter does in this regard, you can send in and we can put it on our website so as another chapter who wants to do something can look at the examples of what other chapters are doing to get ideas for what they want to do. So I'd appreciate it if you would do some kind of a write-up of what you do and send it in. Thank you. Barbara?
Just a quick comment. Some years ago, we did that in Yolo County. We used the Contra Costa model, and then we wrote it up for a newspaper article. That's something to do with it.
Ah, okay. Did I get everybody back there that I was supposed to, like? Okay, Jerry?
Mike. I try to speak loud. I usually do. Butte County's been doing this for a couple, 3 years now. We have not had a single agency that we wrote to that did not respond to us. Normally we look for areas where they say, we're going to access this and we might do it later, or we promise to do something. We'll pick out the ones that we feel are significant, send them a letter, and then we get a response. We had one so far, which was an agency. We asked, the grand jury had asked them to upgrade their strategic plan. They promised to do that by a certain date. 2 years later, we looked at it. Another grand jury looked at it and asked them about it. And the new interim director at that time promised to do that. We looked at it 4 years hence. The interim director was now the director, and it had never been upgraded. So we questioned them and we asked them about it, and he responded that, oh, I'm so sorry, we've been busy, we're going to have it done by such and such a date. We are going to look at it again if it has not been done, and we told him we would do this, refer to the current sitting grand jury. We don't communicate a lot with the sitting grand jury in Butte County. It's an odd situations, but we have had good responses on most of them we sent out. We do make very clear that we are not the grand jury. We are private citizens who have served on the Butte County grand jury, and we are asking this as private citizens. They've all responded.
I had a question regarding if you're doing a follow-up on a relatively recent report. I understand there may be a bit of a concern about stepping on the toes of the current grand jury because there's no way to know whether they are also following up on that report. So what is the CGJA's position?
Well, CGJA doesn't have a position. I don't want to represent that, but in Contra Costa, I can tell you what we do is that part of our process is each year we tell the sitting juror, the foreperson of the sitting juror, this is what we plan on doing. If you don't want us to, let us know. And one year we were told just that, well, we're going to be doing something in there, so don't do any of the reports of this year.
But how can they do that?
As long as they're that general, they can do that. At least they thought so, and we thought so. Karen, you had a...
Just real quick, Placer County, that is in our guidelines, is that we will notify the grand jury of a potential inquiry that we're making. And they can just, it's just a straight yes or no. The other thing is we have found, again, it's part of our, get our name out there. We've notified our judge. We sent her a nice letter explaining what our association is, what it does as far as IRC. We sent her a copy of the guidelines. Just not wanting her to get blindsided if somebody asks her something. So I just think that's another way you can explain what you're doing in the county and keep people informed. We also, as a policy, have at least the foreperson or the business manager could come to our meetings. And if they're not members, we still email them the minutes so they know what we're doing. So the sitting grand jury is not in the dark.
Thank you. One thing that in Contra Costa, I'm a dreamer, I guess. I tried to work with the court to see if we could get at the same place that the report and the initial responses are published on the court's website, if we can arrange a way that the responses could go to them. You know, we ask a question, they respond, and something so that everything would end up in one spot. No, flat no on that. And so what we do right now on our chapter website is where we put the responses we get and links to the information that's on the court's website. But I think it'd be better if it was all in just one place because, you know, the Contra Costa website's not exactly getting a lot of hits.
Next question.
Speaking about Orange County, which is dear to my heart, two comments. With respect to the quality of the response, we have taken the position in Orange County that the jury is not the expert on what the subject matter that we're looking at, or that they are looking at with respect to determining the corrective action. So we, at the Grand Jurors Association, we are interested in seeing what the agency has said, whether they are doing what they said they were going to do, because it's their area that's the jury has the recommendations that pertain to. Secondly, one of the issues that we have, and I don't really know how we're going to handle this, is the follow-up on responses that are not really corrective at all, where nothing happens. We have met with the court about this because we have several instances where the report response just went on and on and on and on and nothing was done, and the jury commented on it, the Grand Association commented on it. So we decided we'd ask the judge about it. The court's response was, hey, that's not our problem. You know, we're not in that area. That's the jury's problem. So they sent me back to the penal code, and looking at the penal code, the only entity that has any responsibility is the seated jury itself. So we're kind of out there between the jury, who isn't really interested in something that happened 3 years ago, the response from an agency that could care less about what the jury thinks, and the judge who could care less about either one of them. So here we are. We're going to come up with something that I think publicizes it all over the newspaper and whatever else help we can get, but that's the way it is in Orange County right now, so.
Thank you. Gentleman back there has been asking to,
Ken Fleming, Butte County. I will just add that we've had kind of an unusual situation lately where someone that our grand jury reported on 4 years ago, the part of a major hospital came to us and said, you know, things have not changed. We've been working with these agencies as you had recommended, but they're not changing. Can you do something about it? And so we've started talking with our implementation committee, started talking about how we handle this particular situation. We have looked at some data that they sent us. In fact, the problem seems to be much greater than it was when we originally reported it. And we're trying to work through how to handle this. Maybe we can report on it next year, what we did.
I wanted to clarify that the sitting jury is not included in chapter meetings in some of these cases, and that you don't have your responses and jury reports on a website, a general website. Is that what you said?
you mean like Contra Costa? Yes, we have our own website.
Yours?
Yes, the chapter's website. We have our own website, and we have a blog, and basically the way that it works is the response that we get back, we put on our blog that we got this response back, and in that blog entry we have the links to both the original report and the original responses. They're just links back to the court's website, which is a general public access website for all grand jury reports and the responses.
Okay, because our county has a grand jury, a jury website, and then it has a grand jury chapter website. But every report that's ever been written for about the last 10 or 15 years is on the court's website with the responses that went to that jury report. I thought that was common.
Well, that's what in Contra Costa is done too, but the responses that we as a chapter get, those are not on the court's website, and the court won't put them there.
And we have part of our board for the chapter is the sitting grand jury foreperson.
I think you may be confused between responses and responses.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
I'm sorry. I think she may be confused between responses and responses.
In other words, the grand jury website is going to have the official responses from the respondents. And he's talking about responses to the letters the chapter sends out, asking what's going on with this thing you said you'd do.
That's what I was.
Okay.
Okay, do we want to go on to the next subject now? Or is there anything else that somebody would like to discuss?
One more thing. I'm going to put cards, because I only brought 4 copies. You've got 15, but others have, I don't know how many they have. But it would be good if you left contact information, whoever has information, for other
Okay.
people that might want to just.
Right, and could you,
We can email it to
could we leave that information on this table up here when we get done? Okay, now I want to move on to the next subject, which is how does one get jurors just leaving jury duty to join a juror alumni group, either a chapter or CGJA? So, questions, comments?
Only a comment in that this is a serious problem, and unless the foreman of the last grand jury is very supportive of the Grand Jury Association, people just quit. Last year I had a foreman who didn't think that the association did that much, and he didn't help us at all, let's put it that way.
Behind,
In Orange County, we encourage them to join the association, and we give them 6 months free membership.
Okay. And Orange County, by the way, is an independent association. It's not a chapter of CGJA. It's one of our 4 independent associations.
Can you explain what the heck that means?
Independent associations? Well, I don't know if I should. Maybe you'll correct me, but in my mind, it means that they are not technically part of CGJA. They are not under our 401c3 umbrella. They have to do their own tax filing completely. So they're completely independent from us. And I'm not real clear exactly what the relationship is, but we try to keep it friendly. Is that a reasonable summary?
I have a question.